Hey, I'm Coach Andrew, and thanks for tuning into the Hormone Helper podcast once again. Here we talk about all things health, sex, bloating, weight, digestion, along with a bunch of other stuff, and of course, how they relate to hormones. Before we go into the podcast today, I wanted to let you know of a seminar that I have coming up on February the 28th. It's on how to decrease inflammation and bloating in your stomach. So during this seminar, I'm going to be talking about two different types of bloating, symptoms of what bloating and IBS really are, how stomach inflammation affects your metabolism and body, and then we're going to go through tips and tools on how to better your inflammation and a specific tool used for removing and getting rid of bloating. So, damn, now that I read that list and I think about this, that's a bucket ton of info that I'm going to share. So, I'm super excited for it. So, if you want to attend the seminar live and get all your questions answered, all you have to do is basically click on the link in the show notes and you'll see it there. It's fitforallfitness.com/decrease inflammation and bloating in your stomach. So I know it's a long URL link. I'm working on shortening them, but if you click the show notes, you'll see that link there. Or if you want to make it even easier, you can email me directly at andrew@fitforallstudio.com and write that you want the bloating seminar info. Super simple. I'll register you for it, and then you're going to get the Zoom link and the details for that. I've decided that I'm going to be doing at least one seminar each and every month, all on completely different topics. That way you can get your individual questions answered, as well as some sweet action steps for what you need to do to work on your own health. This seminar coming up is free. Now, all of them will be free depending on the length or how many seminars I break it up into, but I try to do as much free as I can between the podcast and the seminars themselves as a great way to get people started, but also help clarify if that's even the issue that you're going through. So now that I've talked through that sweet stuff, all right, people, it's gonna be a really big episode on on bloating. So let's get into the good stuff and walk through what's going on bloating wise. With that, I'd like to ask a question. I guess, how many times have you finished a meal and literally right after you finish the meal, your stomach blows up to twice its size, your pants probably become really uncomfortable to wear, and now your stomach starts hurting from the inside out, and that hurting probably is almost like period cramps for those who have them, of course, and it feels like your insides are almost pressing out against your hips and your ribs. There is nothing worse than the feeling of being constantly bloated. And yet, in any given week, about 1 in 7 US adults, so that's 14% of people, suffer from abdominal bloating. So, although this statistic has more women than men in its numbers, bloating tops the number three worst symptoms that people experience when it comes to their digestion. I actually have a lot of personal experience with bloating in that it hit me when I was a lot younger. So, when I was around 20 years old and I was really into bodybuilding at that time, bloating and gassiness was something that was just a regular part of my everyday life. I don't think people realize the amount of damage that bodybuilding specifically actually does to someone's hormone panel and their digestive health, but it was something that I was on a kick and I was hell bent on it. So at that time, I really thought that I wasn't as big as I could be. I thought I was really skinny. So my goal was to basically put on about 20 pounds of weight and then to build that weight into lean muscle. I didn't know any better, of course. So I started inhaling, tons of garbage, high refined calories, a lot of whey protein supplements that had a lot of fillers, just so that way I could hit, my daily calories each and every day. It was getting to the point at that time where I believe I was eating about 6,800 calories a day, which is insane. That's a day. So that looked about 6 full meals. And on top of that, I had to take 2 full whey mass gainer shakes just so that way I could clear that extra 1,000 calories. And for those of you who have never taken a whey mass gainer, it's basically a protein shake that essentially you drink that is just pure calories. There's not even really a lot of protein in it. It's just getting calories into your stomach. So, needless to say, all of that food was too much for my body and my stomach to handle. So, naturally, over the span of the next 2 years, I actually started developing terrible bloating and digestive issues, actually, to the point where I even had blood in some of my stools. So, I had to go to the doctor, and I was sending them pictures of my stool because it was really black. And it was my doctor who was like, your stool is super black like that because that is dry blood. That's blood that's actually passed into your intestine. And that indicates that you are really struggling really hard to actually process and break down foods. So it actually started to worry me. And I mean, it wasn't really my fault. I didn't know any better. And I genuinely thought that everything that I was doing was right. I mean, I exercised 2 hours a day. I varied up my training routine with compound movements. I did powerlifting exercises. I also ran 10K 4 times a week to make sure that all those calories that I was eating didn't end up into raw fat, didn't turn up into coagulated fat into my bloodstream. It was just trying to build as much dense tissue as possible on my body. But I will say, going through that process, there wasn't a single day where my stomach wouldn't be tight. And sometimes it was even kind of embarrassing because I had to hold my stomach in when we would go out with our friends. Otherwise, I would literally look like a turtle going out of restaurants and bars. Unlike my dress attire now, I was actually a fan of super excessively tight forming clothing because I had this obsession with looking muscular. So, of course, because everything was glued to my body, it made it even worse. And I basically had to hold in my stomach all the time when we were out. I think the worst part of it for me, though, was the gas. I honestly felt so sorry for my friends, especially my best friend Anthony, because he knew what I was trying to do with my body and with bodybuilding. So he was like, "Dude, I'm okay with it. If you've got to pass something, even if it smells, we'll roll down the window. We'll continue to jam. It's not a big deal." But it was getting to the point at year two where it was literally unbearable. I could not pass gas in public. I couldn't do that type of expression in front of people because otherwise I I would lose all, all of my friends. There's no way that if they smelt that, now that I think back on it, I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe I even tolerated that. But it was really, really unbearable and hard to do. So when I think back on it now, I realize actually that excessive gassiness, that was a huge warning sign for me that I needed to stop doing what I was doing for my digestive tract. Even when making the changes I needed, and I cut all of that food back out of my gut and I worked on healing my gut, I worked with a nutritionist to make sure that I was repairing my gut lining. My stomach took almost 2 years to heal properly to where I can actually say that I was bloat free from there. So, for me, because I had spent that time with those 2 years living so excessively bloated where my stomach was super tight, I didn't even really know that not being bloated was something that was even possible. Like I had just become accustomed to it, and doctors were telling me that I had a lot of IBS and digestive issues. So, IBS is basically a nice, nonchalant label of saying, you have irritable bowel syndrome, which means, yes, we are confirming that your stomach is irritable, but we're not going to tell you because we can't tell you what it is. So I knew that that wasn't right. And I started working with that nutritionist. And then, of course, we got me to a place where I wasn't bloated. And I've been bloating free since then. So I'm 31 now, going on 11 years. Not too bad. But I hope you can see with that, my personal story, that being bloated is, it really is considered normal now. There are people every single day who are going to wake up with a flat stomach and no pressure. And then from breakfast forward, they become tighter and tighter until they hit the sack in the evening. And they're just this completely distended, feeling uncomfortable being. And that's not normal. Like, I want you to know being bloated is not normal. It might be common because 1 in 7 people have it. It might be common because time you talk to your mom or your parents or your aunt that goes and eats crappy food all the time, they're like, "Oh yeah, like I feel that way all the time." No, it's not normal. That doesn't mean that you can't make changes today to better your digestive system and ultimately improve your nutrient absorption, because that's really what the main issue is when you have all of these digestive issues, you aren't absorbing the nutrients, and that lack of nutrient absorption, it's what's going to set off your metabolism to make it slow. It's what's going to change your hormones and have your body make less and less hormones, and it'll throw your system out of today's spiral, or out of the spiral for you today. Before I go in today's action steps, I want to let you know that there's actually two totally different types of bloating that you can experience in your body. So, what I had was essentially a physical distension or a bloating that was mechanical. I want to go through both so you can understand and recognize which one you have, if in fact you are going through some bloating issues. Then, of course, we can go through some actions that I have my clients do so you can start minimizing your bloating today. So, two types of bloating. First is hormonal, and the second is digestive bloating, or what we call mechanical bloating. I want to start with the digestive first. And my example was one of digestive or mechanical bloating. So essentially, the way that mechanical bloating works is it works with gas that fills up your stomach. So if you see your stomach as a balloon, the top area, not your entire stomach, is filled with all of the stomach acid. There's only about a third of it that has stomach acid in, and the rest is a pocket where gas can travel. So, for example, you can burp, or where gas and bacteria ferment to create chemical reactions inside your stomach. When we have a digestive bloating or a mechanical bloating, this means that there is too much gas that your body can't get rid of. So it is blowing your stomach up like a balloon. So, in terms of digestion, different types of foods have different levels of digestion inside your body. So, things like meat liquefy within 30 to 40 seconds of it dropping down, especially red meats. So, when you eat something, the acid melts and breaks it up. And if it doesn't have a lot of fiber, it's super, super easy to just break down and dissipate. In which case, once things become liquid or as close to liquid as possible, then your body can actually absorb all the nutrients into the small intestine and large intestine once stuff passes. But as we start going from meats, we start going down now to, let's say, vegetables. Vegetables have fiber in them, so they take about 15 to 20 minutes to be able to break down. So what the stomach acid has to do is it has to break down all of those molecules, and then once it starts separating the molecules, it eats the fiber, and then it takes your nutrients and liquefies it. As you start getting further and further down that chain, now you have your carbohydrates. So your carbohydrates, they are very, very difficult to break down. It's not that they're bad for you, they're difficult to break down. So they're more complex. They have more fiber, they have more complex chains that are connected together that need to break down. So it's going to take your body at least half an hour to break down carbs. The two hardest things to break down in someone's stomach is gluten and dairy. That's because they have complex chains, which means they have about 9 to 12 molecules, where some foods might have 3 to 4 molecules. All it means is it takes your body longer to break it down. Now, in terms of your digestion, your stomach is not 100% effective at digesting things. This is why we have waste. If we were 100% effective with our digestion, we would get no waste that comes out of our butt. We would just eat it and the body uses 100% of everything. But our digestion isn't like that. It's not 100% efficient, and bacteria die off in our stomach. So it can't get all of the nutrients, including all of the fiber. So whatever it can't digest or break down, typically within an hour, at that point, that food is then pushed, it's formed into stool, and it gets sent out. So if you have a healthy stomach, you don't have a lot of gases that are trapped in the stomach because the food is being digested properly. You have stool that's moving consistently at a regular basis, and then your digestion and your nutrients are fine. So where this digestive, or why I call it mechanical bloating, comes into play is when all of the sudden your body's taking an excessively long time to break down a food, and that food can't be broken down anymore. So let's say it's done its best to break down all of the carbs, but there's still about 40% of it after an hour that's sitting there. What happens, and I'm using this example here from a wine casket for those of you ladies and gents who like wine. When you have grapes and all the fiber and the peel sitting in after you press a bunch of grapes, what do they let it do? They let the wine ferment. And basically, fermenting is where gases build up and change the chemical in the wine. Your stomach on the inside, any undigested food ferments and creates gases at the top. But unlike wine, where it gets sucked and absorbed into the wine, guess what? That gas is just going to build up and further inflate your stomach. So your stomach gets bigger, bigger, and your stomach, although it looks like a balloon, it's not a balloon. There's only so much it can distend before it goes, I have to let gas go. In which case, gas either comes out as farting. Good luck with that, because guess what? Any undigested food, you're going to get the smell of that undigested food. Or if you're even unluckier, it might come up as acid reflux if it's too high in terms of the acid, or burping. So that is mechanical bloating. Any type of mechanical bloating won't be present when gases are not present. So if someone has mechanical bloating, they're going to wake up and they won't be bloated at all. Their stomach will be flat, their stomach will feel fine, and there's no gases that are in the system. Because overnight, all of those gases already process themselves out. So now you start eating foods and your digestion is very slow. Could be due to your metabolism, could be some other hormonal issues, but your digestion is slow and now gas starts building up. And as gas builds up and more food stacks from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe dinner from the night before still hasn't left if you're not regular. Now, all of that ferments and creates excessive amounts of gas, which is where the bloating comes from. Along with that, you end up having gas in spaces where you shouldn't, like pockets of your stool. So your stool will come out in chunks. And that is a really, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's a very difficult thing to experience or challenge, because that means that your intestines aren't digesting good, healthy nutrients. It's digesting toxins essentially that are floating around in with your stool, because that's what floats in that gas, toxins. So mechanical bloating is never present in the morning, is the worst in the evening, and the harder it is to digest foods, so gluten, dairy, high fat foods, those are going to trigger your digestive issues and your bloating issues with mechanical. Now let's talk about hormonal bloating. Hormonal bloating is something entirely different, and it works with the hormone estrogen. So, hormonal bloating is something that comes normally as a result of stress, or it comes as a result of estrogen buildup. So, typically, estrogen, depending on whether you're male and female, it will live in your gonads or your ovaries. And that's where estrogen kind of floats around. Estrogen, however, can make its way into the stomach and can also live in the stomach as well. When you have estrogen that lives in the stomach, or when you eat foods that are highly estrogenic, and you intake chemicals that have a lot of estrogen, and you wear deodorants and different makeups that have estrogen in them, that all gets sucked into your skin and it'll make its way into the stomach, which is your processing tract, in order to try and get rid of it. Estrogen is like, what's the best way to put estrogen in a friendly way? Estrogen is like the friend who says, hey, can I get a lift? It's just me. And you show up with your one four-seater car and they actually have 10 friends. And you're like, what the hell? I thought it was just you. Estrogen basically multiplies very quickly, which is why sometimes even the weight aspect can be tough with estrogen too, but it multiplies very quickly and it starts hijacking all of the bacteria in order to try to shuttle it to other places in the body. So the bacteria in your stomach that are supposed to be actually breaking down food and passing nutrients to you, guess what? They can't, because now they've been hijacked by estrogen. So over time, as estrogen begins to increase, this is the type of person who will have bloating that is completely random. So maybe today you ate a meal, the estrogen starts shaking up with your good bacteria, and maybe it's an apple that bloats you. And then tomorrow you eat an apple and you're not bloated, but then something gluten bloats you. Random bloating, or bloating that is built around your stress or that is always constant, that is typically hormonal bloating. And normally it comes from estrogen. So that high level of estrogen basically floats and attacks your stomach, and it starts inflammation. Now, either way, whether you have hormonal bloating or you have this mechanical bloating, which is digestive bloating, each one of these is going to present itself with gas. It's going to present itself with IBS symptoms, so cramps, abdominal discomfort, irregular stools where sometimes it's super hard, sometimes it's super soft. And then it's also going to present itself with a lot of inflammatory issues. So when your digestion starts being attacked, you're going to start to have skin issues. You're going to start to feel joint inflammation where your joints get really tight and sore and it's hard for you to move your joints. You're going to start getting low back pain because guess what? Estrogen's going to attack, of course, the inflammation with the spine. And then it starts bleeding into your other hormonal systems where it starts to have an effect on your thyroid. So your digestive system really is responsible for a lot of things in your body. And the symptoms of IBS are just the start of a bigger issue. Either way, whether it's hormonal or digestive, there is an underlying cause as to what started it. You either have high level of estrogen or your body is struggling to digest food. I like to address both, regardless of what someone comes to me with. So we have a lot of clients that we work on with the bloating and stuff with our Vantage program. Regardless of which one they approach me with, I make sure that I address both. We want to keep estrogen low so we don't have any hormonal issues and it's not attacking the stomach. And we want to make sure that we're improving our bodies and our stomach's ability to digest nutrients so we don't build up any gas. Now, a good system means that you're regular and there's no gas or digestive whatsoever. So that means if I have breakfast, right, dinner from yesterday should be leaving. If I have lunch, breakfast leaves. If I have dinner, lunch leaves. Where you should be passing stool at a regular 3 times a day. That's what regular is. So guess what? Some of you are listening to this right now and you're like, oh shit, I only go to the bathroom once a day. Yeah, that's not regular. That is constipated. Actually, twice a day is constipated, even if you have 2 consistent stools, but the stools are small. Essentially, your stools should be passing consistently. So if you're not at that 2 to 3 times a day, early on constipation or slowdown of your digestion is the easiest indicator for you to tell that guess what? Your digestive tract is having issues. And that could be an early sign that your digestion is struggling. So I like to work with both with clients. I like to tackle the digestive stuff by putting in foods that eat estrogen, and then, of course, tackling the mechanical side. So that's explaining both. Now that we're done with both of those, let's actually talk about what we do or what I do to remove the bloating and remove the inflammation. So I want to start with the anti-estrogen based foods. So, if we want to eliminate estrogen in our stomach, we need to put vitamins and minerals into our stomach that eat estrogen for a living. So we want our food to not only help us digest better, but to actually attack and eat the estrogen. So zinc, magnesium, and potassium are the ones that are going to be great to go into your diet, especially foods high in zinc, because zinc is responsible for increasing testosterone, and testosterone helps nullify and shrink the estrogen that's floating around in your body. So, with that, cruciferous vegetables. So dark green leafy vegetables, vegetables that kind of grow in bushel form, your broccoli, your cauliflower, your asparagus, your lentils, that type of stuff really helps basically shrink using zinc the amount of estrogen that's floating in your body. So with that, your bloating is going to shrink and then it's going to start to die down and go away. Now, of course, I'm going to go into some more of these foods on the actual seminar itself and break down a lot of these, but I want to get some main ones here before I end the podcast because I don't like to keep these things too long. I want to straight to the point and done. So, from an estrogen perspective, zinc is going to be your main thing, and you want to have those foods that have high zinc in it. Or you can take a female multivitamin. There's a company called Clean Basics. I'll link it as well. That has a multivitamin and a digestive enzyme, which are really great to help with digestion too. And I'll drop the link in the show notes for that. With the digestive side, if we're going to help improve the digestive stress, what we have to do is we have to eliminate and then we have to restore. And eliminate doesn't mean that you're going to take things out of your diet and you can never eat them again. It means any type of food that is very, very difficult to digest, gluten, wheat, dairy, any type of bean, like a kidney bean, those are typically very difficult to digest. And we want to remove that stuff out so that way your stomach can actually get a chance to heal. So I do this with all of our clients as a good blanket way to start the digestive process because people are going to get immediate relief of symptoms from bloating, as well as they're going to start to see changes in their digestion. They're going to start to normalize how often they go to the washroom and what their changes of stools look like. At that point, what I want to do is I want to increase a couple of things. I want to increase someone's regularity. So I make sure that they have foods high in fiber and high in good quality fats. So I'll put a lot of oils like sunflower seed oil, olive oil, even coconut oil into their dishes. And then I want to make sure that that fiber is higher. So fiber helps bind stool, but it also helps filter waste. So if we get regular fiber into someone's diet, then they're going to start passing stool more frequently, which helps get rid of the bad bacteria. Another way to get rid of the bad bacteria, which I mentioned it quickly, is you got to start taking a digestive enzyme. Pre and probiotic based foods help cure and replenish good gut bacteria. And it's the good gut bacteria that breaks down food and helps prevent gas from coming up. So I would start with those tools first. And then, of course, if you're still having a lot of bloating, well, I guess in the three steps, figure out what bloating you have. Is it the digestive in which you're having a mechanical issue, or is it hormonal? After that point, start implementing these things here. Implement the zinc, implement the fiber, implement the digestive enzyme. And then if you're still having issues, this is where now you need to look and see how long has my bloating been here? Are there any other issues, any other hormonal imbalances? Or is the estrogen so high that it's something that has to be dealt with? Typically, when our clients go through a Vantage program, and I'm looking at blood work or I'm taking a look at the information that the doctor sends me, their estrogen is like almost double what it should be, and that's something that food alone can't fix. We have to do certain protocols to make that adjustment. So that is all that I want to talk about in terms of the bloating. And remember, if you guys are interested in the seminar, to check out the notes, the show notes for that on the bloating and information. It is February 28th. It'll be in an evening, probably 7 or 8 a.m. EST. You'll see the details there in terms of the link. But with that, you feel free to join the seminar itself and invite any friends or family members to the seminar too. Remember, it's completely free. And that is all for today's episode. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode. And thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site? We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.